All right, well, it's 10 o'clock. I think let's get started. Here we go. So I just wanted to do a quick welcome for everybody. Thank you for being here with us today. My name's Erica. I'm from the Wilsonville Parks and Rec Department, and I'm joined this morning by Rob Kappa, who is a master recycler and master gardener. And he's going to be sharing with us some recycling do's and don'ts this morning. But before we jump into Rob's presentation, I just wanted to give you kind of a rundown of why we're doing this programming and some of the things that we have kind of lined up for our community. So we are this whole series of educational programming and these free compost buckets that we're giving away were funded by the Community Enhancement Program. So we got a grant to purchase 500 of these wonderful Wilsonville logoed compost buckets that if you are a Wilsonville resident, you can get one for free. We are giving them away starting Monday at the Parks and Rec admin office and at the Wilsonville Community Center. So feel free, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. we're open, and you can stop in starting Monday and pick one up. You just need to show proof of Wilsonville residency. And then like I said, today we're going to be joined both by Rob Kappa and Jack Shorr, who's going to be joining us later to give us a little presentation on at-home composting as well. And if for additional information, if you want to learn about some of the other programming that we're doing another webinar series later this month. And we've got some other events on there. You can just go to wilsonvilleparksandrec.com/compost is where all of that information is going to be for you. So today, we are recording this webinar. So if you for whatever reason, have other people that couldn't join us this morning, you're welcome. We're going to be posting these recordings on that wilsonvilleparksandrec.com/compost website, so you can view them later. And now I'm going to turn it over to Rob. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And this is a lot of fun. I enjoy doing these type of programs. Unfortunately, because of COVID, you can't do it in person anymore. We used to do these events at, say, like farmers markets and other events and stuff like that. But what I'd like to touch on first is Styrofoam. Styrofoam, as people know, is something that cannot be recycled at the curb. If you have it, you can't get it to facilities that can reuse it, then it does go into the garbage. And there is a location or a company called Agilets, but you'd have to drive the product there and deposit it in one of their buckets that they have there. For example, on my neighborhood, in my street, we have about 21 homes. If we get much in the way of styrofoam, block styrofoam, one person will collect them all and then drive it out there, and then we rotate like that. And as far as popcorn, now the styrofoam popcorn, I haven't seen too much of it, but you can take it to areas like or locations like UPS and FedEx, and because they'll take them and reuse them. So, but lately I have not seen much in the way of styrofoam in packaging, other than the bulk ones. Now, with that said, can we go to the do's picture I sent you and maybe bring that up? Yeah, maybe you can enlarge that. Yeah, best you can. Okay. Oh, good. Thank you. What I should have done, and I apologize for this, was to take all the products out of the container and spread them out so that everyone could see them. But I think this is pretty good. Now, a lot of people don't realize that they can take their, like the aerosol cans, and as long as they're empty, they can recycle them at the curb. As long as the aerosol can has, yes, thank you, Erica. Yeah, that's the aerosol can. As long as it has not contained a chemical that's used for, that might, like say for propane and stuff like that, you can't recycle those at the curb because they do have a tendency, if not processed correctly, could explode. And so that is one thing you can certainly take a look at and make sure you get the can empty and then put in your compost, I mean your recycling bin at the curb. The other one is like products like half and half and milk, and like that one that Leah said, yes, referring to or pointing at. Those can be recycled at the curb because they don't have a product in them that cannot be separated out of the cardboard. These just simply, generally it's products that don't get frozen. You're not going to, generally you don't freeze butter, you don't freeze milk or half and half and products like that. So they don't have a product in the cardboard infused to it, which is called wet strength. Okay, once they do that in the cardboard, it cannot be separated out. And then milk jugs, like the one on the left, yeah, those can be recycled at the curb. Generally, the products like that, I'm not sure. I don't think you can put the cap in. It's kind of a controversy there. Some say you can put the cap in the recycle bin, others say not. So I would definitely check with Erica on that one and see if it's possible at Wilsonville. But the containers can definitely be recycled. Now another one is the little cans like that. Those can be recycled at the curb down to a wide opening, but it has to be more than 3 ounces for the container. Now, why that is, the people at the companies who separate them haven't really responded to that one, in my opinion, correctly. And of course, tin cans, the cans can be recycled at the curb in that little orange container right there. That is can be recycled also, and it's I think that was either ketchup or mustard. I'm not sure which. Now, there are some products that are a little confusing, especially when you go to the grocery store and you'll get what, say you're going to get a food product and it comes in a white container or a black container. And some of them, if you go to like, okay, I'll give you an example. We go to a place called Sushi Kata because we like sushi. They package their products to take home in a number 6 Styrofoam, which is recyclable at Agilets, along with the other products that they'll do. Some grocery stores and some restaurants don't do that. They put it in a cardboard box, which looks like it's can be recycled, but if you feel on the inside, it has kind of a smooth feel to it. That's the chemical that they infuse in it, and you can't recycle that. So you have to kind of shop around and see what's available. And then paper products. There's one back there that looks like it's, yes, that one, thank you. That can confuse people because it looks like it's got plastic in it, but it isn't. It's really a paper product. And sometimes they have the paper product attached to the metal. So you have to take the paper off and then recycle that separately. But other than that, it's pretty simple. And at this point, I can't think of anything else that might confuse people or cause some. That one, yeah, that definitely can be recycled. And that's an excellent product to, sometimes people will just rinse them out and reuse them. You know, it's up to you what you're going to do with it. Then of course, egg cartons can be recycled also, unless you have chickens and then you want to save them. Like a neighbor of mine has. So I passed the egg carts on to her. And Erica, did I miss anything you wanted me to mention in this one? I don't think we covered that pretty good.
Yeah, I have a few kind of more specific. I have an example here of a milk carton that we have at home.
Yes.
Like non-traditional sort of milk shaped cartons like this.
Is that plastic or paper?
It is plastic.
Okay, the bottom can be recycled. Okay, I'm not sure about the cap.
Okay.
Again, I would check with Stephanie on that one. There's some not controversy, but kind of a confusion as to the caps. As to whether you can recycle them at the curb or do you have to take them someplace else. Okay. But that container can be recycled. That's an excellent one to show. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then you said you had a couple more?
Yeah, so I've got bubble wrap.
Oh, yes, bubble wrap.
This is actually what the free compost buckets are being handed out in, is this bubble wrap, and then they're in a cardboard box. And this has got the sticker on it, says 04.
Right.
On the numbers at all?
Well, the numbers indicate the temperature at which the product was produced. That's all the number means. And so, like, if that's a soft bubble wrap plastic, you can certainly take any of the soft plastics, like you'll get sometimes at the grocery store or wherever, and you can put them in another container, you know, and then take them to the grocery store and deposit them in the receptacles that they have for collection. Okay, it's the hard plastics you can't do. When I say hard, in other words, if you took a piece of plastic and tried to push your finger through it, okay, and your finger didn't go through the plastic, that's hard. But if your finger slides through it easily, that's a soft plastic. Okay. So you just take that and recycle it. Thank you for reminding me about the bubble wrap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everything we're handing out is coming in it. So I figured that was a good one to cover.
Yeah. Any questions so far?
Can you touch on how clean something needs to be in order for them to accept it? Like, do you need to rinse out like your recycling?
Yeah, you want to rinse some of them out. You certainly don't want a lot of food left in it, you know, because then it just contaminates everything. And then when it gets to the company to separate it, they'll just throw it away. Here's another item to remember too. Unfortunately, if the recycle load is too contaminated with products that they don't recycle, they'll take the whole load and put it into the dump. It gets taken to the trash. Okay. And that's the unfortunate part about it. The other thing we try to encourage people to do is maybe possibly shop a little bit. I hate to use the word smarter, but for lack of a better word, I'll say that. But it's hard to, because, you know, you go to the grocery store and everything comes in a plastic container, especially the clamshells, which cannot be recycled. You know, excuse me. the problem is there aren't enough companies around that will take these products and recycle them, you know, and turn them into something else, into a new product. And it can be done, but you have to have the facilities to do so. I don't know where the state is on the law that if a company sells a product and they can't recycle the container, they're supposed to take it back, the company who, so I don't know where that is right now, you know, on that. And so I don't want to confuse people or, you know, contradict anything, just to, I'm trying to clarify a little bit so we can, you know, get away from some of the confusion that some people have. Yeah. Many times when they come to the market and they see the products laid out there, like I have in that one, they'll say, oh, thank you, I am doing it right. Or I didn't know this could be recycled, or I've been throwing this into recycling, that's garbage, you know. So it does help to have these webinars, you know. And so let's go to the don'ts, if we could, please. Yeah, blow that one up. Yeah, great. That the one can there right in the front that has the cardboard and the metal on it. Yeah, that one. Yeah, in that form you can't recycle it. What I do, and many other people will do, is they'll cut the metal off and put that into the recycle bin, and the cardboard also goes into the recycle bin because it's been separated out. But to leave it in that form, they won't recycle it. Yeah, unfortunately. Coffee cups that you get from, say, Starbucks or whoever, to the left, yeah, they have that product in them called wet strength to some degree. Otherwise, it's a hard plastic that, excuse me, the soft cardboard that you're looking at, that cannot be recycled. In the plastic container, coffee container, can't be recycled also because it has other products in it that can't be separated out. Ice cream. Oh, that's about, yeah, on the left. That also has that product in it called wet strength, because you freeze ice cream, and any other product that goes into the freezer will have, if it's in a cardboard container, will have that product called wet strength in it. And it's kind of annoying, but you know, it's the way it is. And then let's see now, there's the, I think the one behind the ice cream one is, yeah, I think that's butter. Gee, I wish I should have taken these out, Erica. I apologize for that. And then the one right behind that, even though it looks like paper, it's probably a combination of paper and plastic, okay? And that one has the plastic attached right to the paper. Well, you can't tear that off and separate it out. It's just almost impossible. It's like the, say the envelopes you're gonna get from the, that are mailed to you, okay, and it has a product in it, then you open up the envelope and you've got bubble wrap in it attached to the paper. You can't separate those out. And then there are other products behind it, like that one right behind it. Yeah, that also is a plastic container. It looks like paper, but it isn't. It is a plastic compost or composition. And that cannot be recycled also. That is strictly garbage, unfortunately. And then let's see, we already covered the styrofoam and the bubble wrap. What did I miss here? I'm missing something.
What about Saran Wrap?
Saran wrap, that's a good question. Saran wrap, probably not. It's considered a hard plastic. Now, you know, if you can push your finger through it real easy, then yes, you can recycle that, you know, but you have to take that one to the grocery store. And then deposit it that way, but you can't do it at the curbside. Just about all of your plastic wrap, stuff like that, even the soft ones, cannot be recycled at the curb, because what happens when it gets to the facility, it does jam up their equipment, because the rollers roll and separate, you know, goes through a roller, and then the plastic will wrap around the roller and jam up the machine. And I think did I miss anything on that one? No, I think we pretty well covered it.
Yeah, I think that was great. I did want to also pull up the resource that we have on our compost page. So I'm going to share that real quickly. It's the Wilsonville 2021 Recycling Guide.
Yes.
And it does go over a lot of the information that we just covered, but it's a good extra visual. So let me share my screen with that one.
Yeah, that's an excellent screen. That's an excellent guide. And of course, glass, easy one to recycle. Yeah. That's right, picked up at the curb. Yeah, I like that. This is a good one. You guys did a nice job on this, especially the metal part. Oh yeah, I see the aerosol can there. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of these containers start getting used around the holiday.
Yes, they do. They do. Yeah, the holidays really produce a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of trash. Yeah. And see, it says plastic bags and plastic wrap. Okay. Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah. I think Agilitz is on there, isn't it?
You know what? I think we've got to add it to our website. I don't actually believe it's on here.
Okay.
That's the facility that's in Tigard. I'm not.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. Now, there are some companies that charge you. They'll come out and pick up certain types of plastics and batteries. I'm not too familiar with any of those. I would check with the county and get their opinion on those. I'm not saying they're not reliable. I just don't know, you know, what they charge and how reliable they are. Okay. Needles. That's a good one. Yeah. In Milwaukee, our police department, or it's kind of a combination of fire department and police department building, they have a container there that you can take and put the needles in, okay, and syringes. And in prescription medication, you have to take it. Some police departments or fire departments do take them. Okay, so the Wilsonville Police Department takes it.
Yeah.
And so that's good. And then in Milwaukee, I know they we have the fire department, they'll take them. Yeah. And then you have recycling services down there. I think, yeah.
This is just going to be a little bit about some of the new recycling services that we have going on, which is the
Okay.
waste, the yard debris waste and things like that. That's a new kind of project for Wilsonville so that you can opt in for a yard debris, which is why the composting section of this will cover that, but that's a big piece that we're working on.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent. Yeah, that's a good resource there for you. And I'm sure he's going to cover the compostable plastics. So I won't get into that one. I'll leave it for him to take care of or go through that. Golly.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else at this point.
Yeah, I can pull up the last little piece that we had that I can pull up is the web page that you had shared with me that has that brief video on it. I think it was the Clackamas County web page. We can even play the video. I don't know how long it was. I can look to see.
I think it's like 6 or 7 minutes.
Yeah, let me share that and we can watch that video too, if that would be helpful. Yeah.
Then if you scroll down on that, you're going to find other resources too. Many of them.
Oops.
There it is. I don't know how long that is.
So there's like a glass and a paper. Everything else goes to bed. And the plastic, only glass bottles. Glass jars. All colors and sizes, all the types of things. Make sure you're in all.
Can you hear that?
I can hear it. Can you not hear it?
Very vaguely, very, very low. That's okay.
Yeah. I'll play through it and then just know that this will be a resource on our website later as well.
Yeah, somebody else said it's difficult to hear.
Okay. Well, we don't have to go through it now. Just know, yeah, I'll post the link on our webpage so that folks can see that
Okay.
at a later time. But that looks like a great resource.
Then you scroll down, you'll see other okay, recycling paper and metals and stuff like that. But I think the Wilsonville one is much better than this. Well, either I did a good job explaining it or else I bored people.
No, I think it was wonderful.
Excuse me.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Anytime you want me to do this again, I'd be happy to do so, you know.
Yeah, and hopefully once we're in a more ordinary place in the world, we can do an in-person workshop too.
Oh, I'd love to. I can't wait to get back to that. I mean, in the last year and a half, I probably got 60 Zoom hours. And, you know, after a while, you go a little blind on the computer.
Yeah. I think we all know that feeling.
Yes, we do. Well, no more questions for me?
I think we're all set. I don't see any more coming in through the chat.
Okay. We're going to have a good one with the composting.
Yeah,
Very
so
good.
for anyone who's interested, that one is going to start at 11. So we're going to take a bit of a break here. I'm just going to put up a screen holder for that one in case anyone logs on. But yeah, thank you again for joining us, Rob. It was great.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. Good job.
Yeah,
And nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. We'll chat soon, I'm sure.
All right. Take care, dear.
You too.
All All right, bye-bye.
Bye. All right, good morning.
Here we are.
Here we are. So before we dive right into the presentation, I'm just going to give a little brief introduction for anyone new that is joining us this morning from the previous session. My name is Erica Baylor. I'm the Recreation Coordinator for the City of Wilsonville. And these programs, these educational programs and webinars we've been doing this morning are part of a grant through the Community Enhancement Program, which was the funding behind this project, where we've purchased 500 of these nicely logoed compost buckets that we're giving away for free to our Wilsonville residents. And we are going to start giving those out starting Monday at both the Parks and Rec admin office and the community center. So feel free to come by. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You just need to show proof of residency, and then you can walk away with this beautiful compost bucket. And we're going to learn a little bit more on how to use it today, and composting kind of techniques today. If you have any questions, or you want some of this additional material after the webinar, all of the details and information on where to get a compost bucket and all these educational resources are going to be posted on our website, which is just wilsonvilleparksandrec.com/compost. And I will put that here in the chat for anyone that's joining us today and wants to check that out. And I'm gonna let Jack get started here. We are joined by Jack Shorr. Thank you so much for being here. He is both a master gardener and master naturalist, and he is going to be giving us a little lesson in composting. So welcome, Jack.
Well, as you've heard, I'm an OSU Extension Service Master Gardener. Master Gardeners complete comprehensive training on sustainable gardening practices based on tried and true research. We volunteer our time in the community, teaching others how to successfully and sustainably garden. We have a Master Gardener helpline where you can have your gardening questions answered. You will see us at farmers markets and community events, and we offer educational garden-focused presentations. If you would like to learn more about the OSU Master Gardener program in the metro area, please visit our website at www.metromastergardeners.org. Okay, welcome to the presentation today. This is just a brief summary of what our Master Gardener program involves and does. We help Oregonians grow healthy gardens. We provide gardening information rooted in science. We have more than 3,000 trained volunteers that provide 200,000 volunteer hours and 250,000 contacts annually. We do require annual volunteer recertification. Cultivating resilient and healthy communities throughout Oregon through sustainable gardening, horticulture, education, and gardening projects that are rooted in science and that are supported by OSU Extension volunteers. Here's an example of some of our upcoming events at www.metromastergardeners.org. And you can see lots of things coming up here. Some of them very interesting, a lot of variety of activities, and a lot of variety for different kinds of audiences out there. My name is Jack Shorr, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. I've been an OSU Extension Service Master Gardener since about 2006. I'm both double certified as a Master Gardener and a Master Naturalist. And I love attracting native pollinators with native plants and seasonal blooms, and have recently installed a long alternative featuring clover, which many of my neighbors find very interesting. It's constantly green. So let's get into why would we compost in the first place? Well, there's several really important reasons. One is it improves your soil structure, helps retain water, and very importantly, decreases runoff from the rains, and it feeds beneficial soil organisms. Now, this is an example of our municipal composting, which is often our best option. The big, depending on your neighborhood, the big green bins are available for different types of recycling. And so you just take your composted materials from your garden, from your kitchen waste, and place them in that barrel weekly, and they end up at the big site there. Now we're going to be talking about how to use the compost in gardens and landscape. So basically, we're going to cover soil with 1 to 3 inches of compost and dig it into the soil. You can see persons using a fork there to turn it over and mix it up. It's a really good way to do that. We definitely want to incorporate compost before we're planting anything. It's a good way, as we said before, to enrich the soil, add aeration, and provide lots of nutrition for the new plants going in. Now we're going to talk about choosing a home composting system for food scraps. We definitely want to use a rat-proof bin. We don't want to attract rats with food scraps, not recommended. And we'll talk about it later, but we want to have some sort of covering underneath, or some kind of way to keep the rats from coming in from underneath, as they like to do. So we're going to talk about different types of composting. This is called sheet mulch composting, also known as lasagna composting, with the different layers. It converts grass to beds, enlarges borders, improves soil, and fall right now is a good time to start. You can start by placing the browns and greens directly on the soil. Place alternate layers of materials on top of the ground covered with cardboard or overlapping layers of newspaper about 18 inches to 3 feet. May take 6 months to finish. You can also add burlap, and added compost can speed the process. This is one of my favorites, called low fuss composting, where we use leaves and garden trimmings, no kitchen scraps. Chop and place in a wire bin and mix browns and greens. This is as-you-go composting, called cool composting. Using a plastic or wooden bin with a 1/4 inch hardware cloth on the bottom to deter rodents. You add food and yard materials whenever available. You chop and shred browns and greens, and add greens with browns on top. Turn the pile periodically and add water as needed. I used to compost this way myself before I moved to my new location. I did that for about 10 years. And this is exactly the way I would work things, periodically opening up the bin, scooping out what was ready, and continuing to mix the bin and closing the lid again. This is a different type called Make It Fast, where you heat it up. This requires an adequate amount of green and brown and time and energy to turn the pile. You create a volume of 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot with equal parts browns and greens, and add water. If the pile does not heat up, add grass, manure, or coffee grounds. It takes about a month and another 4 to 6 weeks to cure for use with tender plants or veggies. Another great example is a tumbler composting, which are available in many home and garden stores. And they're popular and they keep rodents out, but you've got to turn the crank and constantly rotate on a regular basis. The main thing is really to build and maintain your pile. Use the bottom layer of browns, leaves, dried flowers, straw, sawdust, shredded paper. Greens next could be grass clippings, small prunings, flowers, tea and coffee grounds, fruit and veggie waste, aged manures. Definitely keep the pile moist, not wet or dry. Aerate by turning, chop into 1-inch pieces, balance layers with brown on top, and cover the pile. Now, really, it's important to know about your, your neighborhood, what's really allowed there, because where you live is definitely a consideration. Like how much material you're going to compost, the materials you're going to compost, the time and energy you need to devote to composting, and the particular plants and materials to be planted with the compost itself. There are many neighborhood associations, especially on the west side where we all live, that are it's very important to acknowledge what you're doing and do it in the proper way. And hopefully it's not a big issue with your homeowner association, but it may be something where you want to make an educational presentation to them at a certain point to let them know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Definitely, we don't want to compost these certain items: pet or human waste, meat, dairy or oil, diseased plants, pernicious weeds, or wood ash. So there's certain types of weeds that are actually so harmful that they need to be placed in the garbage container and not recycled. So there are ways to research that, which plants those are. So I won't get into that right now, but you definitely want to make sure you're not composting plants that come back and provide disease into your new garden. So make sure you research that. Again, here's some items what not to compost: pet or human waste, meat, dairy, or oil, diseased plants, and there's a good example: pernicious weeds or wood ash. If you have any questions, we're available right now or through online. We also have a link here to ways to research or get more information about that, both books and online materials for you.
Thanks for that presentation, Jack. So I just wanted to go over a little bit about, so those were great examples, I think, of different ways to compost. In Wilsonville, I'm no longer a resident of Wilsonville, but I used to be. And for, I think, most residents probably within city limits, we're going to have the green yard debris bins. And what we're providing is kind of this bucket here that you're going to be able to, minus those items that Jack went over not to compost. This is primarily for, food waste in the kitchen, but not those things like you mentioned, dairy, meat, things like that. And then this can go directly into that green yard waste bin. Just curious for you, Jack, what systems do you use now for composting? Do you have a system you use at home?
I actually don't. I moved into a different location. Mm-hmm. So I used to have raised beds, and that's where I was doing a lot of composting. And literally every spring I would just start, bringing things out and putting them into my beds to get ready for planting. So since I moved into where I live now, I'm pretty much not doing raised beds, but I'm doing container gardening.
Okay.
So a lot of the compost that I add is purchased compost, so it's already been broken down.
Uh-huh.
So I pretty much use the green, waste bins that are used by the recycling industry. So I wish I could do that, but my backyard is so much smaller now. So it's pretty much, in the barrel, smaller ways of growing things. So.
Yeah. And do I think a lot of our residents in Wilsonville probably do have smaller yards, or they're working with like a plotted a community garden, or they have like a small raised bed. I'm thinking of this kind of community that we have in Wilsonville called Villebois, and a lot of the residents don't have, they have very, very small yards. So I'm just trying to think of, some maybe techniques for those folks that maybe have a small raised garden bed. Are there things that you can place like directly in your garden bed to kind of compost sort of right in with the soil?
I mean, if you're talking about small garden beds or you're talking about container gardenings, it might be two different kinds of things. The problems in our neighborhood, I think, are residential neighborhoods where we all live very close.
Mhm.
It could be the fact that we have to be very, very careful about what we put in our pots or put in our small gardens. Probably should be broken down. So we want to have that recycling option in between. So it's kind of difficult because if our little buckets on the counter aren't going to really break things down. So you would have to almost purchase a bin in your backyard. But if you don't have a large backyard, that eliminates that option. So
Right.
it seems like then you'd be more like what I'm doing now, which is purchasing sort of inexpensive compost bags,
Mhm.
through, at various garden centers. And usually in the spring, they're very cheap, and just adding that stuff that's already been processed rather than trying to process it on your own property. I mean,
Right.
the only thing I could see would be a community garden where you might have like Villebois or other places where there might be a central location where everybody can compost and it's away from, where the majority of people live.
Right.
So again, it's kind of a difficult way to answer that. I mean, because you can't just take your greens and browns and sort of toss them into your garden plot right away.
Right. Right.
You want to have that breakdown option. And for people like us living in small locations, small yards, apartments, things like that, condos, we really don't have that option. So that presents kind of a difficult choice. So
Mhm.
it sounds like it has to go back into the big, receptacles and picked up. So, and then it seems like it might probably comes back to us later on when we go ahead and purchase it.
Right. And what are your thoughts on, so I have a compost bucket at my house, a small one. It's meant for the countertop, but we actually keep it in the freezer because we found that it helps with fruit flies. And we tend to use the, the green bags that go inside of the compost bucket. They
Yeah.
say that the bag itself is compostable. What are your thoughts on using those versus just trying to rinse out your bucket so it doesn't?
You're sort of one step ahead of where I ended up. I mean, I ended up in the spot where I had so much vegetable waste that I didn't even use the counter bucket anymore. So I just went to those large green bags, purchasing them at, one of the local markets. And I find I just use kind of an old trash can and I
Mhm.
fill that as much as I can with the green plastic bag full of waste. Then that goes out to my big dumpster bin. So I kind of eliminated that situation where, you have it on the counter, you have fruit flies. And so it goes more like to another part of the house or even into the garage.
Okay.
And then that green bag goes out on a weekly or sometimes a bi-weekly basis right into the bins. So,
Got it.
yeah, but you're right. You build up so much waste sometimes that you outgrow your little bucket within a few days.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we take ours out pretty regularly.
Yeah. So I just graduated a larger, I think it's called a 13-gallon bag.
Uh-huh.
That easily feels like a small garbage can,
Right.
You can have a lid on or lid off, and that way you can use metal or plastic and you can transfer a larger amount and maybe have smaller times to refill.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I will point out, we do have a question in the chat that I'll get to in just a minute, but I did want to point out for these compost buckets that we're giving away, they are the smaller size. But the feature that I really do like about them is they've got this inner bucket that is, you can put in the washer or rinse out in the sink. So it gets rid of that, some of that need to use one of those extra bags, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, no, I do like that. And that's an improvement on the ones that I used to use here in the city of Beaverton. It didn't come with a liner. So
Yeah.
you had to purchase the liners and keep dumping those. But with that, I like that you can wash it out, take it outside, really hose it down, let it dry out. Yeah.
We have a question in the chat about if you are familiar with vermicomposting and how that can be used for small spaces.
Well, when I was doing my composting and I was doing cold composting, we using the big black recycling bin, and I ended up having, I don't know where the worms came from, but they kind of showed up. And so they would help break down the soil. It was real great, even though it was cold and I didn't understand how they could live. They managed to survive. And so usually at the bottom of the bin, after a few weeks or so, there was a really nice compost at the bottom. And so that would be, but it was kind of like a dark sludge, but I would shovel it out and put it into my garden. So it seems like if you put in the right materials, the worms show up. And I believe it's this week, there's going to be another option another presentation by master gardeners about vermiculture and how to set that up. So, but again, it depends on your space and how much space you want to allocate to setting up that whole system.
Mhm. Yeah, for those of you that don't know, vermicomposting is basically composting with worms. And we have offered a number of classes through Wilsonville Parks and Rec about vermicomposting, where you can actually walk away with your own sort of vermicomposting bin with worms, which is pretty cool. We'll be offering some more of those throughout the year, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. At my house, we have a vermicomposting bin, and this might be a solution for folks that have smaller yards, depending on, like you said, Jack, you might need to check with your HOA or, your property owner, if it's not your own property, about doing this. But we have a vermicomposting, I forget the name of it, but it's like a bin that's actually sunk, a sub pod, I think is what it's called. And it's actually a bin that's sunk into the ground, so it keeps it warm. And there's worms in there, and you basically feed one side or the other with food scraps and things like coffee grounds, basically any compost you put in this little bucket, you can feed your worms, and they break it down really well. And then you're able to just use, that compost right out of that bin and put it in your garden, which has been really wonderful.
Mm-hmm. I like what you're doing. I kind of miss those days when I was doing that, but it was constant effort. Like I say, taking things out, feeding the worms, turning the pile, and making sure that you didn't have any other little critters coming in, particularly rats and mice that like to get in. So that hardware cloth on the ground is really important to have.
Yeah. Question from the chat. How do you know when compost is ready?
That's a good question. A lot of it is just kind of like how it looks and how it feels. You can pretty much tell if you're putting in all these browns and greens. You're starting with leaves, you're starting with paper, you're starting with kitchen scraps. Maybe at least at the bottom of the pile, if it's going from top to bottom, you can start seeing if you open the bottom drawer or the the bottom window, you might say, and take a look at what you've got. And like I said, mine was sort of a dark brown sludge almost, kind of wet, but you could tell it had broken down. You could literally see what you started at the top, and now at the bottom, it's just sort of like wet earth. So depending on it, it's either going to be wet or dry, but it's going to be much darker and brown. It's going to be all kind of mixed together. It almost looks like I said, sludge, or like maybe like almost like a hunk of mud, depending on if it's wet or dry. Yeah. If it's dry, it's going to be real loose. If it's wet, like my pile was, it's like a sludge, and I would literally have to shovel it out into the garden and kind of spread it out, rake it in, dig it in. So, but it partly what it looks like, what it smells like, and you could even, put some in your hand and tighten it up into a ball, see how that works, see if there's a lot of moisture in it. Some people may want to take it out and dry it, so it goes in drier instead of wetter. So
yeah,
some ways
and I found personally the smell is always surprising. Don't they? They say that good, quote unquote, good compost won't actually, it's not like it's going to smell like rotting food. It should smell,
no, it has a very pure smell, so you're wondering what happened to the stuff on top. All of a sudden down at the bottom, it's just kind of like a pure little brown ball or something, that doesn't have reeking of any of the odors that it came from. So it's pretty miraculous what happens. And but you're right, it's kind of mess free, other than the fact that it's a dirt ball, but it doesn't really smell like anything. It looks a little odd sometimes, depending on the method you chose.
And then I did want to point out for folks in Wilsonville, we're trying to do a little bit of research on this, but for folks in Wilsonville, and maybe you have experience with this, Jack, but a lot of apartment complexes don't really have a way for residents to use compost yet, unless they've opted in for some sort of larger program within their apartment complex. A lot of those folks probably can't compost at this point, unfortunately. Is that?
It sounds like that's an option. I mean, I have through other volunteer efforts, I have looked at people who have lived in small places, apartments, condos, where they had a central area. And that was the great option, because it was a group area. And so you could choose what part you wanted to do. You had a place to put your compost. You had a place to garden. So part of it is just the way that the community living situation is set up. Like Villebois, I've been hearing about that for years in terms of it's a pretty well designed, intentional community. But I don't know if they have community gardens. It would be nice if you had a community garden in your place. There are areas of Beaverton, the city, where there's just sort of these empty lots that have been turned into community gardens. And the city is actually managing those. And they say, this is the city of Beaverton community garden area. And you'll drive by at different times of the year, and there's massive amounts of gardening going on. And I guess what you do is you sign up and volunteer to take care of certain areas. So, I mean, if you don't have that option, it might be nice to try to present that to your neighborhood association, your homeowner association, and see if there's an area of lawn or an area that maybe that hasn't been growing well, that some people could adopt, start your own committee and set that thing up. I mean, I think that would be interesting and exciting to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it for questions. Thank you so much for that presentation. That was really wonderful.
Oh, it was fun. It was interesting.
Yeah.
Hopefully people learned a few things and will at least attend to the Master Gardener sites. And there's a lot of really good information coming up. If you join Master Gardeners, or if not, just go to the metromastergardener.org site. And there's lots and lots of, weekly seminars during the day and the evening, lots to learn.
Yeah, I've always been, I've been interested in doing the Master Gardener program for a while now, but I know it's been hard with COVID and how to host that program over the last couple of years. So I've been keeping my eye on that program. But if there's anyone here that maybe isn't familiar with that program, it's really great. And they have a whole training series to become a Master Gardener. And you have to put in a number of volunteer hours, as I understand it, to get that certification.
Well, I was going to mention that the Master Gardeners have updated that a little bit, where they have the volunteer component, like I did, spend many times, many months, many years volunteering. But there's also an option now where you can just take it knowing ahead of time that you're not going to volunteer. So it's really kind of great because you get the information without having to put in those extra hours.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Cool.
Since I'm retired, it's much easier, but if you're working full time, there's that option to take the class online and not have to worry about the volunteer hours later.
Right. Yeah.
So you might want to check that option.
Yeah, I've been really pleased with the Master Gardener Facebook page too. It seems like those folks post a lot of really great free webinars like this one and different classes on there. So that's definitely something to check out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And by the way, in today's Oregonian, there's an article about about adapting plants or locating plants for the coming climate change.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Weston Miller's in there, and there's a reference to him, and he's in charge of our whole Metro Master Gardener area, and talking about plants that will help us into the coming heat waves we're going to be experiencing. So it's a really interesting article that is in the Oregonian. I just wanted to mention.
Yeah, that sounds great. All right, well, thank you so much for your time. Like I mentioned in the beginning, this session is recorded, so we'll make sure to post it on our wilsonvilleparksandrec.com/compost website for anyone that wants to view it later.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks again, Jack, and I'm sure we'll be in touch soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you.